Well, I'm delighted to be joined on stage by three colleagues and friends from the international publishing community. I will give them all a minute to kind of tell you who they are and what they do, and a little bit about the companies in just a second. Today's session is about monetization through brand extensions and content syndication, not something we touched on, I think, so far. So I'm hoping for a very useful and productive discussion on this really important area of ancillary revenue. But why don't we start by just doing some introductions? Go for it.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Tom Rowland. I'm at Meredith Corporation. I grew up on the timing side. I'd been there about 10 years before timing was acquired last winter by Meredith. And then the Meredith and the timing international business was consolidated under one roof.
John?
Good morning. I'm John Cabell. I run an agency called Cabell. We do international licensing for a host of international media clients, including Meredith, Bloomberg, Al Jazeera, Nylon, lots of groups around the world. We also do some advisory work for investment banks, for media business, and we also do some fundraising for startups and growth companies around the world.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Hudson. I'm Director of International Licensing and Syndication at Media. That's a role I've held for just over 4 years. Prior to that, I also ran the international business at Future, so quite a lot of experience in international markets, including working in Asia-Pacific markets. The Media is one of the largest consumer magazine media groups in the UK, and we're also one of the largest licensors magazine media content in Europe. We've got about 100 print and digital deals, 20 so of which are in the Asia-Pacific region. Looking forward to sharing some of our insight and experience during today's panel session.
Thanks very much, guys. As you can see, we've got a wonderfully diverse range of people here with lots of different views and lots of different experiences, so let's see if we can dive into that a little bit more. If we'd done this panel 10 years ago, we probably would have talked purely about magazine licensing and what a wonderful business that was and how it was booming. I think there's a kind of general understanding that that's slowed down a bit now and maybe even tailed off. I wanted to ask how your businesses, your international businesses, have changed as a result of that. I mean, is there anything that's really coming out as the new normal for the types of deals that you do around the world? Why don't you keep that on?
Thanks, James. I actually brought a slide that it's funny that you mentioned 10 years. So this is, we took a quick snapshot of the revenue in the international group. This is combined Meredith and timing. And so as you can see, 10 years ago, what we call licensed editions, traditional local editions of our brands, so In Style in China or Fortune in China. And that used to make up the vast majority of revenue in our international group, and today, this year it's forecast to be quite a bit less significant. Still significant, but quite a bit less. The growth areas there, as you can see, the purple is video. Now, Meredith has always had a very strong television presence in Australia, as it happens, but a lot of growth in the last couple of years, investment on the video side, from timing to Meredith. We have four in-house video studios where we shot about 60,000 short-form videos last year across all of our brands. And so the ability to license that out or use it, partners using that has really grown. Obviously, the blue, the digital content licensing, has really grown quite a bit. That's been strategic with certain partners in certain regions. ByteDance is a big consumer of a lot of our content, and so that's obviously relatively new. The green is the only one that doesn't appear over here, and that really shows the flexibility of where we are in terms of using our content and brands. So things in there are merchandise, branded education programs. Barclays is going to launch a Fortune-branded ETF. And so those kinds of things just are an example of the flexibility and the diversification that we're looking at these days.
John, similar experience for you guys? I mean, are you seeing the same diversification that Thomas highlighted there?
Very much so, James. I think this slide actually says it all. Most of the business that we're now doing is digitally led. Sometimes in the case of some legacy media, digital only. Content has become much more important in terms of syndication, whereas brands are not as important Time Out is a great example. They're no longer a client of ours, but they were for a long time. They had essentially gone from a print publication talking about going out, eating, drinking, doing cultural things, moving into the digital space, and now the future growth of that business is really around Time Out marketplaces, physical spaces where people can go, easily like concepts, and they get the revenue share they get from each stall greatly exceeds anything they've ever made on the media side. So I think this slide really basically says it all, lays out what's going on in the media landscape around the world.
Tim?
Interesting, I think we're a little bit different at Immediate. We're still seeing some growth from the print sectors, particularly around craft. So in actual fact, our print business is still growing, and I think probably the differences we're seeing are not as extreme in our business. Of course, a lot of the business we're talking about is multi-platform, but it still contains quite a strong print element. One area we have seen some growth in is events. We licensed a particularly successful large-scale event in the UAE for UCB Food, one of our biggest brands internationally, which is very profitable both for us and our partner. And actually as well, I think as John said, we've seen some very strong growth across syndication, particularly over the last couple of years. So whether that brand's becoming less important or not, I'm not sure, but we're certainly seeing strong growth across syndication.
John, I wanted to just come to you on the question of where we are right now. We're in China today, obviously at FIPP Asia. We've had the opportunity here to meet a number of colleagues from the Chinese market and have a look at the fair. How do you rate China as a market for the kinds of businesses that you represent? I mean, if there's somebody here looking for a deal, what kind of deal can they do? What is there on offer at the moment?
Well, my observation is that obviously the market is very mobile-based, so I think the kinds of things we can offer a Chinese media group largely is content for that platform. I've also noticed with one of our clients in the cultural space, there's an opportunity here to do things around exhibition. So let's call it largely events, but I'm also thinking about a client who is looking at permanent exhibition along with a traveling exhibition. So I think clients and content in the science, cultural, educational, technology, ECG areas is really where the opportunities are.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the kind of, we talked earlier about the growth of events in everybody's businesses, and that's being reflected clearly. I'm hearing it from all of you in your international businesses as well. Tim, your experiences in China, I know you have some business here in a number of different fields. Is it an attractive market for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously China's a huge, potentially lucrative market. I think sometimes in the West we get a little bit obsessed with the size of the market being 1.4 billion people. I think the reality is the market for our content and brands is significantly smaller than that. We've licensed Top Gear here successfully for a number of years. That continues to go from strength to strength, and we'd like to ramp that up digitally, I think, over the next 12 months. Interesting, an area we've seen huge growth in over the last 12 months, and something James mentioned in his keynote a little bit earlier, is bookazine content. We've sold about 25 bookazines across history and science sectors over the last 12 months. So I think that kind of educational element within our portfolio across science and history is something that's interesting from both a print and a digital perspective. And I think as well, as the middle class sector kind of grows within China, I think that will play to kind of specialist media as people develop more hobbies and passions. And I think content across our craft and sports area in particular is going to be of interest. If anybody's interested in those sectors, please feel free to tap me up or my colleague Jennifer.
I did promise you could pitch, but that maybe that was a bit too much. Yeah. Does that mirror your experiences, Tom? I mean, Meredith's experiences in China?
Yeah, very much so. That people that see it from the outside see huge opportunities based on the numbers alone. But you really have to find a sweet spot for your brand and your content. We try to be, particularly the last year or two, we try to be very flexible in terms of listening to our prospective partners in China and listening to what they tell us works. Obviously very mobile, as John said, But we had InStyle here for a while. If you're familiar with that brand, it's a monthly celebrity fashion brand. It closed down for a number of years. Then somebody approached us and launched it as a weekly magazine. So that's obviously very different. We're very happy to work with them on that, and it's been great. We also have some other happens to be sort of more of our high-end brands seem to be resonating here, and we have a lot of interest in those. But again, they're going to take different product forms than they would traditionally in the US, and that's great with us. It would take a lot of guidance and a lot of lead from the expertise here in the market.
And I want to stay with you, Tom, for a moment just to talk about something that's becoming a really important aspect of many people's businesses. I don't think we've mentioned it much today. I know it's a huge part of your business and your relationship, the media's relationship with the BBC. Obviously, they have a huge business around this, which is product licensing, which is putting your brand or forming a partnership with somebody to create consumer products. Is that something, I mean, we know it's very important, it'd be useful if you could just kind of give everybody an idea of the scale of that for Meredith, and whether that's something you see opportunities for growth in.
Sure, so for Meredith, the short answer is yes, I see scale. For Meredith, they've been very successful pairing one of their brands, Better Homes and Gardens, with Walmart. And it's predominantly a US merchandising program, although Walmart here in China is now carrying Better Homes and Gardens merchandise. And for merchandise, I do see international as an opportunity. And I would put it into three categories. One I would call strategic, and that's how Meredith and Better Homes and Gardens and Walmart got together, which was Meredith hired a third party in the retail space, an expert in the field, and that expert identified a big retailer with a need. So they identified Walmart, who always says if they don't have 30% market share in anything that they sell and everything that they sell, then they're not doing as well as they should. So that expert, it's all, if you know where to look, all the data is there. They identified several areas where Walmart was not at their 30%, paired it up with a brand that they thought would work, Better Homes and Gardens, and that's turned into a very big business. Just to give you, I mean, I'm not sure all the numbers are public, but Meredith it has over $5 billion in turnover every year, and the Walmart merchandise part of it is significant to them. So that I would call strategic. Can you do it overseas? Sure. You have to be deferential there, but there's no reason that, if you identify a need at Tesco and you find the right brand, you couldn't launch in the UK, or identify the right brand and launch in China or in Australia. It depends on the brand. Maybe Fortune, maybe Time would resonate better here in China or in Asia. Maybe Life, Better Homes and Gardens would play well in Australia, so it's going to depend on those factors.
Tim, something Immediate's had success in, viewed as an area for growth for you, very specialist company with lots of different genres?
Yeah, I think really it's more personal for our bigger brands, because I think merchandising is generally about scale, so consequently it needs to be the bigger brands. James already mentioned about BBC Food, having a successful product licensing business, which it does. We've just taken 100% control of that business, and I think that's an area we'll be looking to ramp up further. Another very strong brand in our portfolio is Top Gear, which has a huge product licensing business attached to it, although that's run exclusively by the BBC as opposed to media. But generally, yes, I think it's an area that we'll be looking at more significantly. Garden's World, which is unsurprising about gardening, the biggest gardening magazine media brand in the UK. We just launched a range of seeds and plants with a retailer there, and that's something we're pretty excited about. There's a number of other smaller projects happening as well. So increasingly this is something we'll be looking to develop in our business.
John, your perspective, something your clients are asking for?
Yeah, we're doing some work with Condé Nast International, and of course they have both cafes and GQ lounges, and that's going to be a big area of their growth, particularly here in China.
Yeah.
So Japan as well, Asia generally, but that's really where they want to focus their attention.
That's taking it to an extreme degree, isn't it? You're actually bricks and mortar, having your own physical presence.
Yeah, they're not owning the brick and mortar, but they're licensing the brand, and it's it's experiential.
Yes, yeah, no, it's a really good example. I wanted to come on and ask about the tension that there might be in the international businesses. I had a bit of this from my own days in the international field. Is there any tension between the desire to franchise versus the desire to own? As the market has changed, do you get tension in terms of your company saying, or your peers saying, oh, we should be owning more of that advertising relationship, we should own more of that content distribution? How are you kind of finding that as the market evolves? Are you under pressure to do more acquisitions or joint ventures? Tim, how do you characterize that at media?
Well, I said immediately, probably not the best people to ask that, simply for the fact that in January of last year we were purchased by FIPP Media, so we've now become a subsidiary of a multinational media group ourselves. So any kind of international development will be through FIPP. In terms of our international development opportunities at media, that would be exclusively through licensing and syndication. But I think, generically as a business, you need to analyse strategically, commercially, what your aims are, because there are different routes to market, whether that's acquisition, joint venture, or licensing and syndication. It obviously depends upon your requirements as a business, as to what route to market you will take. I think immediate's general approach has always been light touch, which is why it's preferred to go down the licensing and syndication route. Clearly there are significant financial and resource capital requirements if you make acquisitions or you have joint ventures, and so for that reason it's always gone down the licensing and syndication route. As a lighter touch, less involvement, working with local experts in the local markets.
John, I know you operate in both franchising and M&A. Are you seeing a change in the balance between the two?
Yeah, I have, James. I think that most media companies are a bit risk averse these days. There used to be a time when bigger companies, the Hearsts of the world, would acquire things, invest in joint ventures. I don't think that's the case anymore. There are exceptions like Bloomberg. The big companies are still quite inquisitive and prefer that route and prefer to own the relationships, as you were suggesting. But I think most media companies these days are more comfortable with the licensing route.
Tom, let me just change the dynamic of that question a little bit. I know you're from a timing background, but Meredith, famously probably the largest media publishing company in the world without significant international owned presence. Is that something you could see changing in the future?
That's right. In fact, we just sold a subsidiary in the UK. So I would, yes, I do, because I think that's where growth is. I think that in the short term, over the last 10 years, and in the short term going forward, I agree with John. Media companies have had a tough go of it the last 10 years, and licensing is risk averse. And it's a good way to expand the brand without taking much risk. We saw some acquisitions in my timing days that personally speaking, I'm not sure. Hindsight's always 20/20. I'm not sure they were the way to go. On the other side, Meredith has been very successful in growing by acquisition. Timing is obviously the largest acquisition they've ever done, but they grew their recipe and food portfolio by purchasing all recipes and by purchasing Eating Well. They purchased Axel Springer's stable of publications in the US a number of years ago. Due to its size, and if they can stay stable, I see the next big growth not as licensing, because that's nice and it's incremental and it's obviously risk averse, but I see if they want to grow, they're going to probably look overseas.
We're running out of time, very conscious of that, so just want to wrap up by getting you guys to give us a quick canter through how you see the different regions of the world at the moment in terms of the success of your business, in terms of growth, in terms of prospects. So, Tom, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I definitely am sensitive, or have grown sensitive, to the differences region by region. What works in China doesn't work in Japan, and doesn't work in the Soviet Union, or Russia now, or Brazil. And so definitely our team tries to be very mindful of listening to the partners on the ground for what works. One thing, and this brings us a little bit back to Tim's opening comment, is everybody still would like to do print. It's no longer the only thing, but over the last 18 months we've launched 5, and in the next couple months another one, so 6 in the last 2 years, print publications. But those are no longer, and that's across the world. That's been China, that's been Mexico, that's been Italy, it'll be in the Middle East, so that's really territory agnostic. But one thing that holds true is it's never the complete launch. You know, the brand is across multiple platforms, and those platforms differ from region to region. So it may be an app here in China, or it may be a very high-end luxury print publication here. It may be events in South Africa. It may be content aggregators in Mexico. So the other products associated with that brand launch are different from region to region.
John, your take on different regions of the world, growth rates, prospects?
I think I agree with what Tom just said, because it's really dependent upon what the product is, format, content. There used to be a day when I could definitively say, yes, the Middle East is hot now. I don't see that anymore. Probably the only area where we're seeing some growth geographically is in Eastern Europe, perhaps curiously. But you know, the world is really flat these days when it comes to, you know, the media space and where the opportunities are.
Tim, to different areas.
I think when you run a global business, I think you become very clear about the fact it's a multi-geared economy, and also the different stages in the digital cycle. I think for the media specifically, over the last 2 years, our growth has not exclusively, but mainly come from mature Western markets. And I think that's because they're probably at the end of the beginning of digital disruption. I think those markets are going to realise there's still opportunities out there. So we've seen growth there. Actually, like John was just sort of saying, in Eastern Europe, with the exception of Russia, I must say, exception of Russia, we're seeing some growth there. Asia actually has been an incredibly stable market for us over the last 2 years. We're definitely seeing some pressure across our print product here, but an increase in digital activity. And I've been told that's time out, so I'm going to be quiet. And back to James.
And we finished bang on time. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Hope you found that useful. Thanks for your contributions. Thank you very much.